Yes, are we good? We'll call the meeting to order. You can go on with the Sunshine Law.
This is Thursday, November 4th, 2021 meeting of the Zoning Board of Adjustment. Franklin Township is operating under a declaration of state and local emergency due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. It has been determined that the public's attendance at meetings of the Zoning Board would pose a risk to their health, safety, and welfare. Therefore, this meeting has been relocated from the council chambers of the Franklin Township Municipal Building to a virtual meeting format being conducted utilizing virtual/remote telecommunications equipment in conformance with directives of the state of New Jersey. Relocation of this virtual meeting of the Zoning Board was posted in the Township's official newspaper, the Courier News, on the Township website, and in the municipal building. For this detail, the following means of public participation in this remote meeting. Link the virtual meeting via WebEx. All-in number for those without internet access. Public inspection of application materials was made available via the Township website and/or in the Township Planning Zoning Department and the municipal building. Formal action will be taken at this virtual meeting. Reminder to board members to mute yourself unless you wish to speak or to provide a vote. And please withhold questions until after the witness has finished presenting. Instructions for public input. Those members of the public that are watching via WebEx who wish to speak, use the raise hand button. Click on the participants icon in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Open a new participants window on the right side of your screen. Lower right corner of that window will be a hand icon. Click on the hand icon. Those members of the public that are listening via the call-in number who wish to speak, please press star 3. At the appropriate time in the meeting, Township staff will announce your name, unmute you, and you will have opportunity to provide comment. Please provide your name and address. If providing a statement, the board attorney will swear you in. After speaking, we ask that if you're on WebEx, please press the lower hand button. Calling in, please press star 3 again. I'll repeat the request to do that. We do want to make sure that everybody wants to speak. Outside of the meeting, if everybody keeps their hand up, it's hard for staff to keep track of the callers who are remaining to provide comment. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Christine, would you call the roll and then present the announcements to the public for the changed?
Yes, sir. Cheryl Bethia? Richard Procanic?
Here.
Joel Reese?
Yes.
Alan Rich? Gary Rosenthal?
Here.
Robert Shepard?
Here.
Kunal Lakia? Wasim Verdas?
Here.
Elizabeth Clarkin?
Here.
And Chairman Thomas.
Here.
Okay? As far as announcements,
Go ahead.
Yep, 1 minute. Okay. If you or anybody is here for the Joe Salazar docket number ZBA 210018, that hearing has been carried to the meeting date of December 2nd, 2021 at 7:30 at a virtual meeting with notification needed only for the newspaper. On the screen right now is the link. You can, if you wish to partake in the meeting, you can go through virtual WebEx meeting. The event address for attendees will be posted on the Township's website. The link for the website is https://www.franklintwpnj.org/franklin-twpnj.org/calendar/event 17624//2193. For those of you wishing to attend this hearing via phone, you can call in at 408-418-9388, and the access code is 179263641. Sci Data Mandir Incorporated, docket number ZBA-19-0007. This matter will be carried to April 7th, 2022. Notification for all those within the 200 feet will be noticed prior to that meeting. At this particular time, that meeting, we are told right now, that meeting will be held in person. If that should change, the notification will state that that's handed out. If you need further assistance on any of these two matters, you can reach me at 732-873-2500, and my extension is 6215. Okay, Mr. Thomas.
Okay, we can go on down to the first hearing for the evening. Robin Mandalakis, CBA 21-00017, C variance in which the applicant seeks to construct an expansion of an attached garage at 1 Edna Court, Somerset, block 59.05, lot 4 in the AC zone. Do we have representation?
Yes, hi, this is Robin Mandalakis. Can you hear me okay?
Hear you, don't see you yet.
I see.
Okay.
We are, and this is my husband, Ted Mandalakis, with me. Hello.
Okay, you're representing yourselves?
Yes.
Then we would need to swear you in to start everything.
Okay.
Are you both testifying?
Yes.
Okay. If you could both raise your right hands. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're going to give this board will be truthful and accurate to the best of your ability?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And for the record, can you just state your names again and your connection to the application?
Yes. Robin Mandalakis. I'm the homeowner at 1 Edna Court in Somerset.
And Theodore Mandalakis, homeowner as well. One in the court.
Duly sworn.
Okay, Mark, do you want to have any insight to offer first, or?
Ron, I think the applicant can,
Mark, you're on mute, I think.
oops, sorry.
Oh.
Got myself
muted.
Yeah, I mean,
There was a TRC application that summarized the application. The applicant is constructing a garage to the front portion of their house. The required setback is 35 feet. The proposed setback would be 26 feet. In the TRC memo, there was a series of figures that show the location of the proposed garage expansion. And its relation to the street, it is on the short cul-de-sac. And there's architectural drawings that show the look of it, and some aerial photograph as well as a street view of the property
to give the
board the public perspective on the application. That's the general overview. And I just have the applicant explain and provide the justification to the board.
Of course. What we're trying to do is add 2 additional bays to our existing garage. We own a few antique cars, and we've been renting garage space, which we'd like to not have to do anymore. So that's the justification. We would like it to be continuous with the house. It really doesn't impact the street view of the house. It's just bumped out a little bit towards the street, but it really doesn't impact the view from the street.
Okay, have you examined, is there any other way you could achieve this without going into the setback?
Yes, the alternative would be to build a detached garage, which, according to my architect, he feels that there is sufficient room to build a detached garage should we want to do that without requiring a variance. But we really feel that that would not be as aesthetically pleasing from the street or from our neighbors' homes having a separate building on the lot. We think it's it's a better way to go to just build it contiguous with the house.
Okay, are there other questions from other board members?
I have a couple. The addition goes into your drive. The corner of the addition goes into your drive. How is that gonna work?
Yes, we would have to adjust the paving, the blacktop for the drive to allow it to still be a circular drive. We just have to adjust the way the paving is done.
Okay. On your survey here, you have the shaded part that's going to be the addition. On the back of it, towards your front door, there is another garage door there, correct? On your house, your existing house.
Yes, if you're looking at the side view of the existing home on page 2, the bottom left elevation there, we currently have 2 garage doors, the 2 on the right. But what's getting added is that first one on the left. We're just bumping out the existing garage towards the street and adding a 3rd door.
I gotcha. Okay. The back of the survey doesn't show the way the driveway's going to be then, after it's done.
Not currently, correct. It would be slid towards the cul-de-sac, into the bulb of the cul-de-sac to the right,
Yeah,
to be able to accommodate the circular.
yeah.
Showing the dotted line still for the current, correct.
Okay. All right.
Any other questions from anyone? Okay, what I understood from your testimony is that you're testifying that you believe this is a better alternative to fit in with the surroundings in the neighborhood than it would be to add a detached garage that would be fully forming. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, or do you have any other testimony to offer?
That's all I really got. I think this is just a better way to add the 2 additional bays than having to build a separate structure.
Okay, if there's no other comment from the board, we'll open to the public for this.
Okay, so to remind the public, I don't think we have any call in.
So everybody's on WebEx, so you can use the raise hand function by clicking on the participants window, and the raise hand button is in the lower right-hand corner of the participants window. So suggest we give the public a few seconds here to alert us if they wish to speak. Mr. Chairman, I'm not seeing anybody raising their hand.
Okay, then we'll close to the public, and if there's no other comments or questions or information needed, I would entertain a motion.
All right, I'll make a motion that we approve ZBA 210017.
Okay, do we have a second?
Asim, okay.
Carol,
Thea?
Yes.
Richard Profanic,
Yes.
Joel Reese,
Reese?
Yes.
Alan
Alan
Rich,
Yes.
Mary Rosenthal,
Yes.
Robert Shepherd,
Yes.
And Chairman Thomas.
Yes. Okay, good luck with it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I assume we could drop off now?
Okay.
yes, you can get off.
Get off the thing. Thank you.
Have a good evening, everyone.
You too.
Okay, you too. Okay, we'll be moving on now with DK Apna Grocery, doing business as Apna Bazaar, ZBA 21-00021, C variance in which the applicant seeks sign variances to place 2 signs for a tenant with within a shopping center located at 3151 Route 27, Franklin, block 34.05, lot 43.
Should be a Victor and,
NB. And does this applicant now have, would have someone representing them?
yes, Mr. Miller. Lane, we can see your name, but we can't see your face. Mr. Thomas, this is Lane Miller. He's the attorney.
Attorney for this application?
Okay.
Can you now see me?
Yep, we can see you now.
Thank you. Lane Miller on behalf of the applicant, Your Honor. Mr. Chair, and members of the board. And hopefully my applicant and the property owner are calling in. I just confirmed with them on the phone, telling them we were up.
Yeah, Lane, I've given their information to Mark. Let us just scan the
attendance list and see if we see their names.
you said they're calling in?
I believe they're calling in. I gave them both sets of information. It appears that today is a new year within some cultures, and it's being celebrated. At least, but I was led to believe. So.
Right, but when we talked this afternoon, they're going to testify. They have to be able
to be sworn in. So
I don't even see their name.
Lane, either one of their names.
Yeah, they're supposed to be communicating in. I know that each one of us sent the WebEx information and the like that we just sent.
Do you have any objection, Lane? Maybe if we
could move on
next person and come back to you. So
not at all.
okay, why don't we do that? Because I don't see their. I know who they're supposed to be, and I don't see their names on the attendee
list. So
that be okay with you, Lane?
Yeah, perfectly fine. I appreciate the courtesy.
Sure. So is that okay, Mr. Thomas? I'm sorry, I just
kind of.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll defer this application and move on to Gabriel and Luzilda Mercado, ZBA 19004042. C variance in which the applicants applying to construct a two-story single-family home at 17 Ambrose Street, Somerset, block 181, lot 41.01 in the R7 zone.
Can I interject for 2 seconds? If you don't mind.
Lane, I was just going to say, they have to, Jason, is it okay if they call in, or don't you have to have them there so they can be sworn, to see them?
Yeah, they really need to be seen to testify.
Okay, Lane, let me give you my phone number. That way you can text me, and if you can't get them, then I'll communicate that to everybody. That way you don't have to keep popping in and out. So 732-718-6892.
6192. Okay, so
That's
they need a computer. Good.
No, 732-718-6892.
Got it.
Okay, so you just text me when you know what's going on, and I'll communicate it to everybody, okay?
Well, if I can just interject something, because I got a text from one of my clients saying that they're showing is their meeting not started yet, so I don't understand.
And what they're doing, they're
I don't know if it's
getting
on your side.
they probably tried to sign in on the trial run. What I'll do is I'll excuse myself when the next hearing starts, and I'll go back to my desk, and I'll try to pull up their names and send them the link. And I have their phone numbers, so I'll just call them and talk to them from my desk. Is that okay?
Thank you so much.
No
I really
problem.
appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
I don't need to be here for that.
Okay, Gabriel and Luzilda Mercado.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Peter Lanford
On behalf
of the applicants. This is application
to construct
of
a
a
family
residential dwelling at 17 Ambrose Street, block 181, lot 41.01. There are 2 variances that we need as a result of the lot, which is an undersized lot. The lot area requirement for the zone is 7,500 square feet. The lot consists of 5,000 square feet. The lot frontage requirement of the zone is 75 feet. and we are proposing 50. The lot is 850 by 100 feet. This matter was previously heard by this board under ZBA 2005-1103 under the name of James Maimone back in 2005, where Mr. Maimone came in before this board and presented testimony to support the variance for the undersized lot. The board granted the variance, and I'm looking at the members who voted on it. Mr. Rich and Mr. Shepherd are still around. I'm sure they recollect that hearing very vividly.
Like it was yesterday.
Seemed like yesterday. But they voted in favor of it at that time. Mr. Maimone never moved forward to build a house. Mr. Maimone eventually sold the property to the Mercados. The Mercados intend to construct a single-family dwelling on the property. If you look at the TRC report, there were also other variances mentioned because the house that was being proposed exceeded the coverage requirements for the dwelling. The building coverage is 20%. We were proposing to build a house with 24.97% coverage. We also intended to exceed the impervious coverage, where 30% is permitted and 33.8% was proposed. I have discussed this matter with my client, and we have and will agree to reduce the size of the dwelling so that we will not be seeking any variance for lot coverage or for building coverage. With the only one slight caveat, if I can ask Mr. Healy. Mr. Healy, the front porch, as I noted on the plan, shows that the porch is covered. Would that increase the building coverage requirement, or would that require a variance?
Now, the porch is covered, the roof counts towards both building and impervious.
Okay, I would then indicate, and I'll have Mr. Johnson, our architect, testify that we will be reducing the footprint of the house to 1,000 square feet, which would be the 20% of the zone requirement, but we would request permission to cover the porch. I think it would be appropriate, and if the board says no, we won't, but I think it would be more appropriate, more aesthetically pleasing if you look at the plan on page 6 of Mr. Healy's report showing the house. I think covering the porch would probably be a benefit. I do have this evening Mr. Johnson, who is our architect, and also Mr. Ford, who prepared the variance plan, and is also a licensed planner. I will call as my first witness Mr. Johnson. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We need to see you, Larry.
Just see video settings.
So far we can see a wall socket.
Yeah.
There we go. We just went to the front.
Okay. Yeah,
I'm here. Larry, can you raise your right hand so the attorney can swear you in? Yes.
Mr. Johnson, do you swear affirm that the testimony that you're going to give this board will be truthful and accurate to the best of your ability?
Yes, I do.
Mr. Chair, do you routinely do the credentials, or should we leave that to Mr. Lanford?
We let Mr. Lanford present the credentials and then decide.
Thank you, Larry. You can put your hand down. Mr. Johnson, you're a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey? Yes, I am. And for how long have you been so licensed?
Since 1983.
And have you testified before your
Accept credentials.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Johnson, you prepared the architectural plans which are the subject of this application? Yes, I have. Okay, and when you prepared the original plans, the house had a lot width of 26 feet and a lot depth of approximately, was it 48 feet? Is that correct?
You mean the building size?
Yes.
Yeah, it was 26 by 48. And in order to bring it down to 1,000 square feet, not including the discussion we just had about the porch, but it would end up being 26 by 38 foot, 5 inches.
Okay. And can you describe what the house, the materials of the house and what it would look like, or what we were proposing initially?
Yes, we were siding with the hardy board, I believe. I don't have the plan in front of me. If you like, I could get the plan. Is that necessary, or do you have the sheet there with the elevation? Tell us on the elevation.
Part of, I think Mr. Healy has it as part of his report, but it's going to be hardy board?
Yes.
Okay, and you remember, it's a two-story house, correct?
Two-story house, that's correct.
And do you remember, without looking at the plan, the layout of the house?
Yes, there's a garage on the right as you face with your back to Ambrose, and you have an entrance to the left with a set of stairs, and then behind the entrance is a one bedroom on the first level and a kitchen dining area to the left of that.
And what about the second level?
And then the second level has 2 bedrooms in the rear of the house, one on the left, one on the right. And then there's a public bathroom area, and then there's a larger bedroom in the front of the house.
Okay. And in order to reduce the size of the house from 46 to 38 feet, are you eliminating rooms or just making the rooms smaller?
Making the rooms smaller. The rooms were very ample in terms of size. They were like 21 foot in depth, and this would then bring it down to a little more than 10 foot. So the bedroom on the first floor would get to be 159 square feet, which is still an average sized bedroom. And then the 2 bedrooms up above would end up being approximately the same size.
And you heard,
It would not change at all.
okay. And you heard my comment regarding the covering over the porch. Do you have an opinion aesthetically whether that is appropriate and what the look of the house would be without it?
Yeah, the look of the house is a main concern, but very definitely the weather conditions here in New Jersey really does make it much better if people have coverage over their front door to protect them from the wind, the rain, the snow, the ice. As they step out the door, they stand there with their keys trying to get into the house. So it's a much better condition to have a covered entrance.
Thank you. I have no further questions of Mr. Johnson.
Any board questions?
I have a couple. This house, is it bigger than the rest of the houses in the neighborhood?
Mr. Rich, this house meets the bulk requirements of the neighborhood and is consistent with what's in the neighborhood. There are no variances that are being created as a result of the house itself. The variances are because the lot is undersized and because the lot doesn't have frontage, but the house itself does not create any variance.
Okay, so let me ask this question then. If we build this, is there enough room to put additional buildings like a shed or a deck or anything like that? Or is it totally built out to maximum?
We would have built out the maximum building coverage coverage and impervious coverage, so that if anyone wanted to put an addition onto the house or do something else, they would have to come back to the board for relief.
Can I make a comment? There is no coverage for decks, as I understand it, so they could put a deck on the house without needing an additional variance, as I understand it.
But a patio would require it, or something of that nature, or an accessory structure.
The accessory structure, they would have to meet the code of how many square feet and how far from the rear and side setbacks would have to be obtained, but it would impact the coverage and the impervious coverage.
Okay.
I'm sorry, you're saying it would?
Well, we're maxed on the coverage and the impervious coverage now. So if we added a shed, a 10 by 10, we would be adding an additional 100 square feet to the impervious and the coverage numbers.
So that would necessitate, as I indicated, a homeowner coming back to the board.
That is correct, is my understanding, yes.
Other questions? Okay, we'll only open to the public once. Go ahead, Bob.
Is the homeowners or the applicants amenable to building the house as it appears on page 6 of the application?
It is our intent to build a house that was shown on our plans, other than making it smaller.
Okay, good.
Any other questions? We'll take the rest of the presentation before we open to the public, so you can call your next witness.
Okay, and before I call my next witness, I neglected to put into evidence and to put as part of the record, as this board is aware, when you're involved in a situation where there is an undersized lot, there is a requirement for the applicant to either attempt to acquire additional property, which is not available in this case, and Mr. Ford will testify as to that, or to sell the property to the adjoining property owners. We prepared a letter on June 28, 2021, and sent it to the owners, the property owners, at 15 Ambrose Street and at 433 Somerset Street, which are the two adjoining properties, asking them if they would be interested in acquiring the property. I have in my possession the certified green cards saying that both owners signed for it. Neither of them responded to my letter indicating any interest in purchasing the property. I did submit to the township, and I don't know if it's on the website, but in advance of the hearing, I did submit copies of the letters that we sent to the adjoining property owners. Having said that, I'd like Mr. Ford sworn in, please.
Mr. Ford, can you raise your right hand?
I'm here. I am.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're going to give this board will be truthful and accurate to the best of your ability?
Yes, I do.
Right, duly sworn.
Mr. Ford, you are both a licensed engineer and professional planner in the state of New Jersey,
That's correct.
and you have testified before both this board and the planning board on numerous occasions prior to this evening,
Yes, I am.
and have...
We accept them.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas.
Mr. Ford, can you describe, and I don't know if you want to just pull up on the screen, if we share the screen, the plan that we are proposing with respect to this project?
Yeah, I don't see share screen activated, but I think it's pretty straightforward. We're, as you introduced the application, we're a 5,000 square foot lot. We're 7,500 square feet is the required minimum lot size. So that's one variance we require. as well as lot width where 75 feet is required and we're at 50 feet. And we have withdrawn the previously requested variances regarding impervious coverage and building coverage. So those two remaining variances are indicative of the existing conditions. There are existing structures on the lots on either side of this property, lot 42 and 39. The subject parcel is known as lot 41.01. So there is a straightforward hardship in acquiring additional land to widen the property to provide for the 75-foot lot width as well as lot area.
Okay. And in response to one of the questions of the board members, obviously you're familiar with the subject property and familiar with the area surrounding the subject property. Is the lot that we are developing generally consistent with the lots in that neighborhood, and is the house consistent with the size of the houses in that neighborhood?
Yes, I've reviewed aerial images of the area. They're on either side of this property are, I'll say, deep, narrow structures similar to, the proposed structure being 26 feet wide and now being reduced from 48 feet deep to about 38 and a half feet deep. I'd say the one difference is we are actually providing for the required front yard setback, which allows for the access to the driveway, so that the proposed structure will be more conforming with the zoning standards than the structures appear to be on either side of this property.
Okay. And do you have an opinion if the board were to grant a variance for the covered porch, would that have a negative impact on the zone scheme or zone plan?
I know I've heard Mr. Johnson's testimony, and I agree. The access to the front of the dwelling would be via a set of stairs and a stoop, covering that stoop to provide for protection from inclement weather as people enter and exit the dwelling seems reasonable and would not, I think, from an aesthetic standpoint, improve the appearance of the dwelling.
Thank you. I have no more questions of Mr. Ford.
Anything from the board?
Yes, I do have one question, just to clarify. So if you are proposing that you have the cover over the porch, would that not mean that the variance for impervious coverage, you would still need that, or no?
Yes, you're correct. As Mr. Lamford said, the footprint of the dwelling, that's for the building coverage, is restricted at 20%. If we were to cover or include the coverage of the front porch, which I don't know if Mr. Johnson stated this, but it's about a 5x8 front covered porch, or 40 square feet, over the 1,000 feet maximum allowable, would be an additional relief. That's correct.
That would be building coverage, but not the impervious coverage hasn't changed because the porch was always there. So we're not asking for any additional impervious coverage, just the building coverage because of that 40 square feet for the roof.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Any other witnesses?
I have no other witnesses, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we'll open to the public.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, so before, I just want to confirm, again, the change. So, with regard to the impervious, so on one place on the plan, it said it was 30%, and the other part of the plan, it said it was 33.8. So I just want to confirm that this change to reduce the size of the building is this plan then going to comply with 30% with the front porch?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
So then the only variance other than the lot area frontage is the building coverage, and the only manner in which it is over is the porch.
Correct.
Okay.
I want to clarify that. I just want to make this, especially since there are two figures on the impervious on the plans, I want to make sure 100% we're all on the same page. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So to the public, again, it looks like we don't call in people.
No, Kevin McNeil, look at Kevin McNeil. Texting you. Bottom hand, but it's.
No, there's no.
So anyway, to the people who are, if anybody's calling in, star 3. If you're on WebEx, you can use the raise hand function as described previously. Give the public a few minutes to
indicate their desire to ask any questions or make comments.
So is Bill Connell.
Okay.
All right, looks like that WebEx shows me that there's a raised hand changes. So we have, thank you, Christine.
Yeah.
The first up is Kevin McNeil. Go ahead, Mr. McNeil.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
No, since we're doing this once, you should swear him in.
Mr. McNeil,
Yeah, it's black.
Yes.
do you swear affirm that the testimony that you're going to give this board will be truthful and accurate to the best of your ability?
Yes.
And can you please provide your address?
11 Ambrose Street, Somerset, New Jersey, 08873.
Please proceed.
Okay, yeah, no, I just have a comment. I am the homeowner. My wife here, we're would be the second house away towards Somerset Street from the proposed building. I think that it was that the lot now is pretty much an eyesore. So I would welcome any building on there. I think it would be it would add to the block, because right now the lot is pretty much unkept for most of the time. We've been here 4 years, and it's pretty much been an eyesore for the whole time. So welcoming the addition of the house. As far as I heard you guys talking about the covering, I would, as the person living next door, the two houses next to that, my house and the house that's directly next to the house that's being proposed to be built, they both have coverings over the porch, and I think that it's definitely something that I would want. I mean, because I'm able to enjoy my porch so much more with the covering. It helps with, now with all of the delivery services that we have with, Amazon and so forth, that it helps to keep your packages and things safe from the weather. So I'm just hoping that the board would grant the application for this building to be built. And this is me coming from, I guess, a future neighbor of whoever's building the home. And I guess that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, one other question. I heard the attorney say that, I was just curious, and this is just, maybe I heard it wrong. He said that the two adjoining properties, he said one was at 15 Ambrose and one was on Somerset Street. And I was wondering if that was a mistake, or if maybe the owner was on Somerset Street, or because it's the adjoining property is not on Somerset Street.
The mailing address of the owner of the adjoining property is.
I got you. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else, Mark?
Yes.
Bill Connell?
ahead, Mr. Connell.
How you doing? I just have a general question. Do you need to swear me in?
Need to swear in.
Mr. Connell, what's your address?
25 Spring Street?
Okay, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're going to give this board will be truthful and accurate to the best of your ability?
Yes.
Duly sworn.
Duly sworn.
McNeil? Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
So I was just looking, just a general question, looking at the drawings. You have the portico or whatever you want to talk at the front of the house, and you have 3 bathrooms in that house. And it's being marketed as a single-family house, but on the technical drawing, it says single dwelling or double dwelling. So what is this actually going to be? Because it looks like it can easily be converted either way, to a single family or a double family. So what is this being marketed as?
It's a single-family residential dwelling. The lot is not sufficient or large enough to qualify for a multifamily dwelling, so it is a single-family dwelling.
Okay, but it looks like it actually could be converted pretty easily.
It is a single-family dwelling.
Okay,
21 kitchen.
that was it.
Yeah, and I'll speak to that too, that the plans that are submitted for building permit will be reviewed. And as Mr. Lanford said, the zone does permit two-family homes, but you have to have 15,000 square feet for a two-family home. So they will, plans that are eventually when they submit for permit, we will make sure that the layout is for a single-family home. If they do a two-family home, they'll be back to this board, and I can't imagine they'd have any justification for a two-family house on a lot this size. That's why they're before the board for a single-family house.
Thank you.
Okay, any more public?
Not seeing anybody.
Okay, then we'll close to the public. Mr. Lanford, you want to close?
I don't think I can say it any better than Mr. McNeil said it, so I'm not going to say any more. I think we've proven our case. This is the classic undersized lot. We've attempted to sell the lot. We haven't been able to. We are reducing the building to now make it conforming, so we're not seeking any additional variances other than the porch. And again, I think there is ample testimony from both my 2 professionals and even the testimony of Mr. McNeil for the statements of Mr. McNeil in support of the porch. I would hope that the board would grant the variance for the single-family house and the additional variance to allow the porch covering. Thank you.
Okay, if there's any board discussion, we'll go on with that. If not, we'll entertain a motion.
Okay, I move that we grant Gabriel and Lucilla Mercado the frontage variance and the area variance and the porch covering variances that will allow them to build a single-family dwelling at 17 Ambrose Street in Somerset, and the house to be built will be the same in appearance as the building appearing on page 6 of the application to this zoning board.
I second.
Second.
All the board.
Cheryl Bethia?
Or is Christine not active?
Yeah, I'm here, sorry, I was on mute. Follow the instructions. Cheryl Bethia,
Yes.
Richard Prokanic,
Yes.
Joel Reese,
Yes.
Alan Rich,
Yes.
Gary Rosenthal,
Yes.
Robert Shepherd,
Yes.
and Chairman Thomas.
Yes. Now, how do we stand with,
Mr. Lane is ready with his person, so we're going to switch back to Mr. Lane here, DKAP Apna Grocery Incorporated.
okay,
Thank you, Ms. Woodbury.
You're welcome,
And
Mr. Lane.
thank you for your indulgence, members of the board. I have one of my witnesses Mrs., who's the owner of the center in question. The applicant has been unable to connect in for reasons beyond me, but I think we can proceed with the owner of the center and give the sufficient testimony for this application. That's Mr. Victor Tandon, and I believe he's participating. If he could be invited in and sworn in.
He's there. Mr. Tandon, if you can hear me, we can see your name, but we don't see your face. I believe you're calling in on a phone, if I'm not mistaken. So, can you hear me at all, sir?
You're on mute.
Oh, yeah, I see you now. Can you unmute him?
Yes, I'm good now.
Yes, I do see you and we do hear you. Okay, sir, please allow our attorney to swear you in.
Yes.
Mr. Tandon, please raise your right hand. Do you swear and affirm that the testimony that you're going to give this board will be truthful and accurate to the best of your ability?
Yes, it will be, sorry.
Duly sworn.
I do this one.
Please proceed.
Okay. And Mr. Tandon, you're familiar with the application by DK Apna?
Yes. Yes.
For the signs? Yes. And what is your connection to the application and the applicant?
We are the landlords for the shopping plaza, and the applicant is our tenant.
Sir, Mr. Tandon? Tandon, can I please suggest that you pull over and speak to the board, because number one, we can't hear you, and number two, I don't want to be responsible for you getting into an accident, so we're going to wait patiently while you pull to the side of the road, because we cannot hear you.
I already pulled. The only reason I was driving was I'm going to the DK grocery because he cannot connect, so the owner also can be with me on the video call, so he's about 5 minutes away, but that's fine, I'll just park on the side, I'll give my testimony. No problem.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, if we can get the testimony and then...
And then you can drive and meet him, and if we need him, but at least it's the safe thing to do, so, and plus we can hear you.
Sure.
All right, go ahead, sir.
Okay, so Mr. Tandon, you said that you're the landlord and the owner of the center in question, correct?
Yes.
And you're familiar with the nature of this application and the prior operations at that center, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And this is an application for an oversized signage and for two signs where one is generally permitted for a tenant. Or
Yes.
in use.
Yes.
This particular user is going to take what was previously more than one severable unit within the shopping center, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and do you understand why, did you participate in the design and sizing of the signage?
I know the signage overall, I mean, generally I know it's a big sign, and I know how it looks, yes.
Okay. Who was the prior tenant in the premises?
The prior tenant was Good Fortune. That
Okay.
was a Chinese grocery store, but they also had a bigger signage than what Apna Bazaar is proposing right now, one of the signs.
And that's what I was getting to. The prior tenant sign, that signage was larger than
Yes.
the Apna Bazaar sign that is going to be requested?
Yes.
And do you know why the applicant is using signage of that size?
For a simple reason, if you...
Maybe he doesn't need to present anything, I don't know.
Route 27 is pretty far from where his store is, right? So for the visibility point of view, when you pass from Route 27, you can see, you need a big sign so that the clients can see his store and they can see that Apna Bazaar is over there. At the same time also, there is traffic, when you're going traffic, it's a small sign, there's going to be traffic because there won't be direction 27, I know for sure. That's why he's choosing to have a big sign so it's clearly visible on Route 27.
Okay, so it gives enhanced visibility for the location of this user and allows greater safety, I believe you're trying to testify to?
Yes, from Route 27.
And as you indicated, this sign is in fact smaller than the prior user, the
Yes.
grocery store.
The prior user was Good Fortune. They had a bigger sign than what Apna Bazaar is proposing, for sure.
And it was is in the same location as the Atnar Bazaar sign is going to be placed? Approximately?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It is exactly the same location.
Now, there was also a request for a second sign that says rotate.
Right.
Are you familiar with that signage and the purpose behind that?
Yes.
Okay, and what is the rationale for that signage?
Now, Atla Bazaar I think it's about a 35,000 square feet, X amount square feet store. It's a big store. And what Atla Bazaar is doing is something on timelines of Costco. They have an entrance where they're selling grocery and they're selling, all these merchandise to customers. But at the same time, the roti sign is a restaurant which he's having, like Costco has for pizza, where people can come and sit and eat. And that particular section is on the left-hand side, a separate unit. So when people come in, they can do their shopping and then they can go and eat like Costco does it. And he has a sitting place and he has a separate entrance as well. So that is the reason he wants to show the client that my grocery store are two sections. One is the grocery and the other one is the restaurant where you can sit and eat pizzas or Indian or whatever, like a semi-restaurant.
So it's essentially like a food court on most of the grocery.
Exactly, like Costco or I think Magnum's or all these people have. So.
And you said that food court area would have its own entrance in addition to the general grocery store entrance?
Yes, grocery store entrance is separate and the food restaurant is separate.
And the signage would basically indicate where each entrance was? Is that accurate?
Yes, exactly where the roti sign is. Below is the entrance. The Atla sign is, he has an entrance below. They're two separate entrances, yes.
And is that designed so that someone wanting to go to one particular use can park in adjacent to that area, in the parking area?
100% you're right, sir.
Okay. I have no further questions of this witness.
Okay, are there any questions from the board?
I have one question on, I just need to be sure that I understand this. The part of this building that is going to be occupied by the Apna Bazaar, is that the old Lucky Food store? It is the Good Fresh Chinese store, not the Lucky Food. The Good Fresh. Speak a little louder, please. Good Fresh. There used to be a Chinese, 45,000 square feet Chinese store, which went out of which is no more there. So Atma is coming in place of that, yes. Okay, and so these signs are going to go on the front of the building? Yes. Okay, they're not going to be freestanding signs out near the edge of the property or somewhere in the parking lot? No, it's going to be on the building. Okay. That's all the questions I have.
Anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple. Now, there's a third business place there too, correct? You mean for Atla Bazaar? For you, yeah. Oh, for my shopping plaza. Right. We have some over there in Somerset. I mean, in Somerset shopping plaza. No, I mean right next to your Apna store, this food store, and next to that food store, that restaurant, there's another one, right? No. Next to that, it's Bottle Republic. That's a liquor store. Okay. That has nothing to do with you. Oh, they're my tenants. Okay, so there's not going to be a sign on that one?
Okay. If I may, Mr. Rich, I believe the witness is confusing. Atma Bazaar is one user and tenant. There is another tenant in the shopping center, Bottle Republic, which is completely unrelated to Atma Bazaar.
Yes. Okay, you're going to have to forgive me. I was there and looked, and it looks like it's all under construction. I thought there were three business places that were under construction there. There's not? No, there are two. One is Atma Bazaar and one is the Roti. Okay, my mistake then. Yeah.
questions? Other witnesses?
I can call the applicant. I believe that his testimony would basically replicate and provide perhaps a little more color on the testimony we just heard from Mr. Tandon. I don't believe that I need it unless there were questions that the board had of the bizarre principal himself.
No, I don't hear any concerns at the moment. We could go ahead and open to the public, and if anything comes from that, we'll address it.
Okay, so,
Thank you.
Chairman, the only person...
As Mr. Tandon said, he was going to try to help Mr. Seaton, the owner of the Bazaar, to get on the line. Yes. Give me just 5 minutes and I'll be there. Okay, well, why don't we wait till we see if you need it, Mr. Tandon?
Okay.
He's already driving, what's the matter?
Okay, Mark, we can open to the public.
Yeah, and I don't, the only person that raised their hand up is Mr. Connell. I don't know if it's still up from the last hearing or not. I'm going to call him, I'll ask him. Oh, looks like he's put his hand down.
Okay, so I guess Mr. Connell doesn't have questions on that.
I do not see
anybody with their hand up for this application.
Okay, then we'll close. Now, as far as the board goes, is there anyone who feels you need more information? If not...
I just have one clarifying question. I noticed in the picture, in the application, you have the freestanding sign. And that freestanding sign, there'll just be one sign for the business? Is that correct?
I'm sorry, are you talking about the freestanding sign for the entire center?
Yes.
I believe that's correct, but let me see. Mr. Tandon, are you still on? Yes. Okay, Mr. Tandon, you're not seeking to add an additional freestanding sign, correct? Correct. Yeah, that is not part of this application, Mr. Tandon.
Thank you.
Any other board members feel you need more information? Otherwise, we can move on with a motion.
Grant the variance listed for ZBA 21-000-121 for DK Agnet Grocery Inc.
A second, Gary.
Carol DeFia,
Yes.
Richard Kopanik,
Yes.
Joe Reese,
Yes.
Alan Rich,
Yes.
Gary Rosenthal,
Yes.
Robert Shepherd,
Yes.
and Chairman Thomas.
Yes. Okay, next.
Next, members of the board.
Okay, Soho Rose Incorporated, ZBA 20-00026, variance in which the applicant supplying parked 15 school buses on the property at 2 JFK Boulevard, Somerset, block 386.17, lot 138. A general business zone. This has been carried from October 21st with no further notification needed. I think Mr. Lampert was on with this one.
I was, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, members of the board. Peter Lampert appearing on behalf of the applicant. Actually, this application started on May 6, 2021, at which time we presented certain testimony, and I will review that testimony very briefly with the board since numerous months have passed since that hearing, and I'm sure recollection of some of the board members may not be as sharp, and it wasn't as sharp with me until I reviewed the minutes. But before I go further, it appears that we have 6 members that were present in May
Mr. Reese and Mr. Shepherd were not present. So the first question I have is whether either of them have the video or audio so that they could vote, because this is a use variance and I have 7 members.
After every, oh, go ahead, Bob.
I remember the testimony, so I must have read it, but I don't remember when I did that.
I was just gonna say, after every meeting, who's ever not there, I send you an email stating that you have to look at the or listen to the testimony, read the minutes, whatever. I know I have Bob's back, and who was the other person? Barry?
The other person that was absent was Mr. Reese.
Oh, Joel. Joel, did you read it?
Yeah, I did, but I can't tell you verbatim.
Been a while back that this thing's been hanging.
Again, I just want to make sure they at least saw the video or read it so that they're eligible to vote.
Yes, I can verify that after the meeting I send it, and I have both of theirs back.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. Again, not to belabor what happened on May 6th, but I think it's important that I spend a few minutes reviewing the testimony and reviewing the application. This is an application to request the approval to park 15 school buses. None of them are the big school buses. They're all 16 to 24 passenger buses on property at 2 JFK Boulevard. At the hearing on May 6th, I presented information concerning the fact that this matter was in fact reviewed by the Franklin Township Historic Commission, and it was approved by the Historic Commission. At that hearing, I presented the testimony of Mr. Ali, who is the principal of the applicant. He indicated that he is a tenant in the building. His office is located at that location. That he operates a school bus company serving numerous municipalities. He has a total of 25 school buses that he proposes to park 15 of them on this property. And at the hearing, we showed you where we would be parking them, which is in the parking lot furthest away from the building. The other buses that he owns stay with the drivers, and they go with the drivers in the evening. He indicated that the drivers come in the morning at approximately 7 a.m., that they pick up their buses. Some of them will come back after their morning run. Some of them will not come back after their morning run. Those who come back will come back around 9:30, leave, and then come back in the afternoon to pick up the buses for their afternoon run. He further testified that there was no evening events that the buses would be going to, and there are no weekend events. I also presented the testimony of Mr. Antisel, who is a professional engineer and professional planner, and was so qualified. He described the property in question that has 3.72 acres. The building has a footprint of 7,328 square feet. The building has a 2-story building. He reviewed the uses that were in the property. He also reviewed and had exhibits showing the area where the buses would be parked, and showing how they were screened and the vegetation around the screening of the buses. He also opined that there would be no negative impacts on the zone scheme and master plan. During that presentation of planning testimony, I referenced the Scholastic bus case, which indicated that the parking of school buses is in fact an inherently beneficial use, and therefore the board has to give it due consideration. The chairman questioned the board attorney at that time, Mr. Lagana, concerning whether in fact that is is accurate, and Mr. Lagana confirmed that. He also, Mr. Anisal testified as to what he observed concerning the usage of the parking lot, and that the parking lot was minimally used. At the conclusion of all the testimony, Mr. Rich, Mr. Thomas, and Ms. Bethea all had questions concerning traffic and requested that I obtain a traffic report. Mr. Thomas also requested that I ask the owner of the shopping center to be available this evening. I have communicated to him. He is not my client. I asked him to be here this evening. I don't know if he is on, and maybe ask Mr. Rubin, so Mr. Healy can verify whether he's here or not. But this evening I intend to call Ms. Dolan, who did prepare a traffic report to deal with the numerous traffic questions that were raised by the board members in May. And then I need to briefly recall Mr. Anisal to reconfirm the basis of the use variance. So having said that, I don't know, Mr. Thomas, if you want to talk to the owner, if he is here, or should I proceed with my testimony?
I think you should present the traffic testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can we have Ms. Dolan sworn?
Ms. Dolan, are you up on screen?
Yes, I am.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're going to give this board will be truthful and accurate to the best of your ability?
I do.
I duly.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Dolan has appeared before this board on numerous occasions and is a recognized professional engineer specializing in traffic. Will you accept her qualifications?
Correct, she is licensed, right?
I assume she's still licensed.
I am still licensed, in good standing, yes.
We accept it.
Thank you.
Ms. Dolan, you heard my sort of recap of what took place in May, and I, after the May hearing, indicated the concerns of the board regarding the parking of school buses and whether the site can handle it, and also the on-site circulation. As a result of my request, what did you do to present a report to the board?
We initiated a series of traffic and parking counts at the site beginning in July. We monitored the inbound and outbound flow during the typical morning peak hour, and then the afternoon peak hour, and the bus activity would be peaking. And we also counted up the actual number of parked vehicles on site, which included buses, because when we visited the site on weekends and later in the evening, there were more buses, of course, than during the day. That was July. As we progressed and put a draft report together, we all realized that July numbers, August numbers are going to be lower than when school's in session, so we resumed counting in September. In addition to having my staff there, I have visited the site several times, but the formal counts were performed Wednesday, July 28 from 2 to 4 p.m., Thursday, July 29 from 7 to 9, and then after school started again, Tuesday, September 21, 7:30 to 9 a.m., Wednesday, September 21 from 2 to 4 p.m. And we provided a table. There's about 200 vehicle increase in the two-way traffic on JFK, but the traffic volumes entering and exiting the site were generally consistent, not typically, not all that high, maxing out at about 70 trips. That's a total of the inbound and outbound. Sometimes you wait a little bit longer to make a left out, but for the most part, the driveway's functioning fine, and that again is based on formal counts and my several visits to the site. I did not see any problem with on-site circulation, with movements into and out of the site. JFK Boulevard certainly does get busier at times, and that makes turning left out a little bit more challenging, but we're processing those volumes without any significant issue. I think the bigger point of our exercise was to examine the parking sufficiency because we're using a portion of the site to park buses. And I guess it's that sort of northeasterly access parking area or overflow parking area seems to be well suited for this use because there's not much parking demand in front of the building or behind the building. We have twice as much parking as is required by ordinance. There are, I think, 66 required. We've got, let me just make sure I've got the right numbers here. Yeah, the ordinance requires 66 at one per every 225. We have 135 on site. The maximum demand we ever encountered was 39 vehicles. And that leaves at least 85 to 90 spaces available. And I understand, and I've been provided with the resolution from the catering facility that's on site that occupies about 4,600 square feet. And their approval relied on either valet parking for higher attended events or use of that northeasterly overflow parking area. From my perspective, if I were going to an event, I would not want to park back in that area, and I was not a participant in that application, so I don't totally understand the specifics, but when there are higher attended events at the catering facility, many of the other businesses are closed. There's ample parking out front. So even if the buses are parked in that northeasterly parking area, there's sufficient parking, and if there was a requirement for valet use for 75 attendees or more, they could certainly put more vehicles into the front parking area than that area is striped for. So from our formal counts, my many visits to the site, observations and counts, I do not see the bus parking as in any way negative to the successful and continued operation of this shopping center. There are different uses that have parking demands at different times of the day, but overall I would concur with what Mr. Lanford said in recapping Mr. Anticel's testimony that the parking is minimally used. There is just not a high parking demand here, and the fact that we've got twice the amount required by ordinance, in addition to the fact that parking demands are coming down. We have now the 5th edition of the Parking Generation Manual from the Institute of Transportation Engineers. 10 years ago, we were looking at a parking demand ratio of 5 spaces per 1,000 square feet. Now we're down to about 3 spaces per 1,000 square feet. So based on counts and parking accumulation, which I didn't give you those dates, but the parking accumulation counts were conducted on Saturdays, Friday nights, weekdays at all different time frames, beginning in July and extending through September 2021. And at no time did we find any parking problems on site. There's ample parking, and I think also the impacts of COVID-19 to the catering facility have reduced parking demands for that use as well. I don't know what the future holds for that type of use, but certainly they are limited in capacity and attendance figures. But even if we look at pre-COVID types of demands, I find there to be parking, ample parking for all the uses on site, with multiple buses being parked in that northeasterly portion of the parking lot.
Ms. Dahl, you noted in your report that at the present time the building is fully occupied except for 2,500 square feet, correct?
That's right, and we made an adjustment for that occupancy, and still found that there should be at least 85 to 90 spaces available, even if that vacant space were occupied.
Thank you, Ms. Dahlman. I have no further questions.
Okay, any board questions?
I just want to make sure, I'm going to clarify one thing. The buses that are going to be parked there, there's 15 of them, and they're going to be 6 and 8 passenger buses?
No, they are small buses with passenger capacity, as testified to by Mr. Ali at the last hearing, of between 16 and 24 passengers.
Well, that's different than what I have. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
My pleasure.
We're only talking about
parking, they're not gonna do any other items like fixing up the bus or something like that? Just parking, right?
Just parking, correct.
Mr. Rosenthal, at the last hearing, that issue was discussed. There would be no repairs of vehicles. Obviously, if a vehicle has a flat tire, somebody's going to come out and put a tire on it so it can go. But there is no maintenance of the vehicles there, no washing of the vehicles there. There's no fueling there. Nothing will take place on the site except for the parking of buses.
Okay.
I
Thank you.
believe you mentioned the last time something about no idling.
That was one of the, there was a question raised that, and there will, obviously the buses will start and they'll leave. They're not going to be sitting there idling at all. And I think if you recall, Mr. Harley says although he has 15 buses there, not necessarily all of the buses go out every day. Some days there are actually less buses than the 5th. Some of them will remain there during the day as backup buses. So not all of them even leave the site on a daily basis.
Yeah, I do have a question about the buses, but since we're still on traffic, I'll hold it momentarily. Any other questions for traffic?
I don't know if this is traffic. Yeah, this is probably not traffic. It's related to the parking. So I don't know that falls under tracking, but traffic. But we had discussed that the bus drivers where they would be parking. Is there going to be designated parking for the bus drivers when they come?
They will be parking in the same area where the buses are. That is correct. There's, as Ms. Stone indicates, there's ample room in that back section. And obviously, if some of the buses leave, some of the drivers who come in later in the morning can pull into one of the spaces that was formerly occupied by a bus and park there because that bus is gone. But they will be using that back section. And again, as Mr. Aldi said, not all 15 buses go out, so we're talking about, somewhere between, approximately 10 passenger vehicles that come in with drivers to pick up their buses.
But that back parking where the buses will be, they will be sharing that with some other tenants, or is that they mostly will have that parking space?
What was discussed and what was recommended at the last hearing was the area where the buses would be parked, which is at the far end of that remote parking lot, would be signed bus parking only and would be marked off. So that area would be only for the buses. The rest of that parking lot is available to anybody at any time. There's plenty of parking there, and it would be available to be used by patrons of the shopping center. So the only spots that would be blocked off would be for the buses, and if I remember correctly, I think Mr. Andersell said, given the size of the buses, it actually is 21 parking spaces that would be marked off.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I should ask this now for clarification, because I like to know for sure the parties that we're dealing with. This is Saha Rose Bus Company. Who is Sunset Bus Company? We're approving an application or hearing an application for Saha Rose. And it's for 15 buses. There's another company back there using that, apparently, or is this part of Saha Rose?
It is not part of Saha Rose. There have been times when some other buses have parked there, not with the consent of my client. My client has 15 buses that he parked there based on a lease that he had with the shopping center owner. Sunset is not my client. Sunset is not requesting anything, and if they are currently there, they're not there with any approval or permission from anybody that I know of.
Well, what's your suggestion about that? Because those Sunset buses are back there all the time, and they're, at least Saha Rose, if it's approved, there's there's going to be some order to what's going on.
And I think that, you know, obviously if the zoning officer is aware that somebody is doing something that is violating the ordinance, obviously they should issue a summons to either the owner or to Sunset Bus because they don't have permission. We're not here asking for permission for Sunset. We're asking for permission for Saha Rose for those 15 buses. I don't know anything about Sunset. I don't know why they're there. But obviously, if they're violating the township ordinance, the township can issue them violation notices and/or summonses.
Well, another thing, I would kind of, and I don't know who would bear the responsibility for this, but if this were approved, I'm beginning to think I'd kind of like to see the allotted amount of parking spaces for Sutter Rose relined with the size of the buses because they're slightly bigger than the car spaces. And that would hopefully ensure, if it's also marked and designated, that there wouldn't be auto traffic parking in with the buses at some of these other potential functions, even though it's not a well-used shopping center, so to speak. But you know, this company should have its place. It should be designated as its place, and that's what should be in it. But is that Saha Rose? Is that our obligation to put a condition like that on Saha Rose? You know, when it's or is it the responsibility of the owner? That's why I was asking, you know, for the owner.
If the board feels that the parking spaces need to be restriped for the buses, they can obviously impose that as a reasonable condition in granting the approval. We would have no objection to restriping those parking spaces and would be more than happy to do that. And I think, as Mr. Anisal testified at the previous hearing, we have no problem putting signage up saying where the buses are, that it's bus parking only. And if you want to put a bus parking for Sarah Rose only, whatever the sign may be, we can put whatever sign you want. But we will be glad to do all of that.
Well, this approval is for Saha Rose only. You know, I also suggest lining the parking lot like that because, quite frankly, that section of the parking lot's a little bit run down. The lines are a little bit not as easy to see as they are in other places. And I do make note of the fact that the owner has made some minimal cleanup and improvements since the last time that we had the hearing. But I just want to be clear, maybe, you know, the rest of the board feels the way they will feel the way they do. I'm only hearing and listening to an application right now for Saha Rose, and not for anybody else. And if it's approved, I want it set up so it will work for the people who use the shopping center and for Saha Rose.
And I concur with that. Like I said, whatever else may be going on there with other buses, that's not part of my application. That's not my client. And if there is something going on there, I think Mr. Healy, who is the senior zoning officer now, is aware of it and can do whatever he deems appropriate with respect to that.
Okay, any other board questions for traffic?
Yeah, Mr. Go ahead, Mr.
Thank you. I just have one question, kind of expanding on the previous line of questioning. If it was approved for 15 buses and then another bus company parked in one of those 15 spaces, where would Saha Rose park? Well, the other.
Quite frankly, if somebody was parking in spaces that were designated for us, I would assume my client would have that bus towed and get it out of there because it shouldn't be there.
Thank you.
Okay, I have one question for Elizabeth. On your study, page 5, first paragraph, last sentence,
does that sentence mean and where's it coming from?
Sure, if you go back to page 4, the second to last paragraph, on August 16th, there were 18 buses parked in the lot occupying 22 spaces. So this goes to, I believe, Mr. Anticel's prior testimony that we would need about 21 spaces to comfortably park the buses, because the buses are bigger than typical passenger vehicles. And then it also goes to the comments that we've just been discussing about potentially restriping so that we have appropriately sized spaces for the buses to fit. So if they're 9-foot spaces, the buses are wider, then they're going over the lines. So that's what that means, is that the buses need more than the stripe spacing allows them.
I see. You're not saying, okay, 18 buses, but they weren't all rows of buses then, were they? There were white buses in there too?
I'm sorry? There were
white buses in there too?
There were 18 yellow buses.
Yellow, okay.
Yes, so maybe those were some of those sunset buses that we were just discussing, because that was the maximum number that we did count back there. And just to note to everyone that rear parking area contains 56 spaces. So I would say that restriping to appropriately accommodate buses would not compromise the parking supply. And I think it would be a better configuration and more appropriate with the signage that has also been discussed.
Any other questions for traffic?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I could ask a question. So the report indicates, Ms. Dolan, where did you get the square footage figure of 14,656?
I went back and forth with Mr. Lanford's office. He would have to, I think, tell you where exactly that came from, but I think they had gone back through the township files, but I'll leave it to Mr. Lanford to further explain that.
That was the original approval. I don't want to tell you how long ago it was, but I handled it. I was able to pull records, and that building is 14,000, whatever.
Was that the footprint or the total square footage?
The footprint is 7328, and the total building is double that, 14.6. And based on your ordinance, as Ms. Dolan indicated, the ordinance requires one space per 225 square feet. So your ordinance requires for that shopping center 66 parking spaces.
First, the footprint, that's indicated on a survey or site plan?
It was indicated as part of the original approval, and that was the size of the building, 14,000. The footprint is 7,328 square feet, and I think Mr. Anisel confirmed that too.
I mean, Mr. Rubin's here too. I mean,
when I measure our system, I have a footprint of 14,000. It's important because it speaks to, it's a kind of important part of Ms. Dolan's testimony about what the parking requirement is on the site.
We can call Mr. Anisel or Mr. Rubin to clarify.
I have a footprint of, that looks to me like that's the footprint. Site plan indicates that it's a two-story building, which would suggest that the square footage is double.
There's no question it's a two-story building, but maybe Mr. Rubin can clarify that.
All right, I'll bring in Mr. Rubin.
Hey, Mark, I just did a quick Google Earth measurement, and it's about 14,000 square feet.
I got 14,600. Thank you.
Mr. Rubin, we see your name, but we can't see you. In order to swear you in, we need to be able
to see. If you could turn on your camera, please.
Okay, now we can see, but we can't hear you. If you want to, mic, please.
Unmuted, okay. Was Mr. Rubin previously sworn?
No.
No, okay. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that your testimony before this board will be truthful and accurate to the best of your ability?
Yes.
And can you provide your address and affiliation with the applicant?
Sure. My home address is 368 Aldeburgh Avenue in Franklin Township.
And your affiliation?
I'm one of the owners.
Duly sworn, you can proceed. Questions for the witness?
Mr. Rubin, what is the square footage of shopping center?
14,000 square feet. Total of 28,000 square feet with the two stories.
It is 28,000.
Yes, it is.
Total square footage.
Yes.
So that's the amount that needs to be divided by 225 to come up with the parking requirement. Well, I don't know if you've had the chance to redo some of these numbers on the slide, but I think some of your testimony is going to have to be revised.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. If we're going with 28,000 divided by 225, the requirement is 125. Whereas we were talking about 66. So 125, and we've got 135 on site, so there's a surplus, but it's not as good. It's not the double that I had indicated earlier. Yeah, 135 spaces, 125 is required at 28,000 square foot total building area, with the requirement of 1 for every 225. So the requirement is 125, there's 135 on site.
Right. Also, the total rentable square footage, because there's common, space, is actually only 25,000 square feet of rentable space. The rest is lobby and hallway space.
Mr. Rubin, how long have you been one of the owners of the shopping center?
Well, my parents were the original owners. We started the building in 1983 and we finished it in 85. And then, after my parents passed, I became one of the owners.
Okay. And so Mr. Owens' report, he observed about 40 vehicles parked in the shopping center. That consistent with what you observed? Was there a time when there were more cars parked in the shopping center? And is there a reason that you could attribute to the low parking demand at the site?
Well, again, as tenants have changed, and one of the spots used to be a gym, which used to have much more traffic, which no longer exists there. But the most of the tenants or the customers are very transient. Of course, COVID, obviously became a major factor. The other thing regarding these buses, in past years, we have had a serious problem with dumping in that far end of the parking lot, where we have had to spend tens of thousands of dollars of money, and we've even caught a few of the people dumping and had the police there and had their vehicles towed. Since these buses have been there, we have had absolutely no dumping because, again, there's no direct route for that to get, through to the end of the parking lot, which we call the Horn, because there is a large piece of land that goes all the way out to Easton Avenue, and people take advantage and dump blacktop and housing materials, and we have not had that problem since these buses have been parked there.
The board members, have any other questions?
Yeah, who's Sunset Bus Company?
I have no idea. The only person that I meet is, Saharos. He's the only one who has, any right to park there. We have had, many times people parking vehicles there, construction companies and things like that, and I constantly have to call the police and have them go there and, and monitor and contact the owners of these people. And like I said, again, they're all yellow buses. I don't go out there every day and look what's in Sunset or what's in Saharos, but the only person who I have allowed to park there, and that is obviously pending this approval, is the Saharos.
I understand to a point what you're saying there, but, I use personally a couple of the vendors or shops that are in the center. It's really easy to see the buses that are Sunset and Saharos, and Sunset buses are virtually always there. Second thing is, I had hesitated bringing up a way of exiting for the buses, the shopping center, in order to really make sure there's very little mix of buses with the commercial people who are using the commercial part of the
Hard to get around that back way.
That would be to go behind the building and around the building and up toward the front. There's plenty of room in the back of the building for those small buses to go out to the street and not have to come back and make a couple of turns and go through the parking aisles. And I think that would, in my mind, that would be a safer exit. The only thing that hinders that is a dumpster that's sitting out virtually in the middle of the driveway, an old chair, a desk, other kinds of garbage that are there. If that were cleaned up, it's paved. There's no real traffic volume back there. There are no parking spaces back there. Buses could leave that way. They could come into the center, go around, go to the back where they're parking, and then go out that way. It's almost like a one-way circulation. But quite frankly, this place needs to be cleaned up. And I don't buy the excuse that you didn't know that there were Sunset buses there and that they don't belong to the people that you're renting to. You make it hard for this applicant to establish credibility on my end with what's going to happen with this operation, which may very well work very well if everybody cooperates.
Well, the natural flow of the traffic is for all the vehicles to enter from the right side of the building and come behind the building and exit to the left side of the building. There is a one-way sign on the left side of the building that doesn't allow the vehicles to, or shouldn't allow the vehicle to enter from the left side of the vehicle, from the left side of the building.
Yeah, I'm not talking about them entering from the left side of the building. I'm talking about them doing exactly what you just said. But everybody will have trouble navigating the pavement behind the building because of all the stuff that's flying around.
Well, I mean, this is, we obviously, we have Fauci that picks up the containers, and we are constantly dealing with people dumping by containers. I mean, there's just, there's no way to control it, and unfortunately, the police do not want to get involved happening everywhere. It's not just at this shopping center. Since, I guess it's about 6 months ago, we hired a company to actually clean the shopping center, having trouble, keeping tenants and having them pay their rent through, especially even before COVID. And then during COVID, we've had to file 5 evictions, which, a few of them came up with money, and 2 of the people we had to actually evict, which the courts finally opened up for us to do. So, the shopping center for the last year and a half has been operating, on a, negative cash flow. And, but now that we are almost fully, occupied, we've been doing the improvements to the shopping center and getting the place cleaned up, but it's a daily nightmare of people dumping, and in the parking lot, by those dumpsters. It happens to all properties, even other properties that I manage. It's a constant battle. But, maintaining the back of the building, so that there's an even flow, we constantly do that. But it's just, it's just out of control with the dumping.
Well, you don't give me a lot of confidence that if we, as a board, approve this and establish conditions that have to be met, that you're going to be able to follow through and help this applicant fulfill the conditions.
Well,
there's a credibility issue here.
Well, again,
I don't see this, I understand what you're saying. I don't see it to the same extent in other places around that I frequent. And at the same time, you have an applicant asking permission to run buses through here twice a day for a good part of the year, and it really, it's going to be difficult with some of the conditions that are existing.
Well, I'm open to any suggestions this committee has that I could do. Again, the whole Sunset, bus, again, I don't go back there and look at the names of the buses. I'm not sure who they are. I don't know if it's someone that, Sakarosa is working with, but I can certainly, go back there and see the name of buses, and, I'm not sure.
The Saharo's guy is there.
You can't just
if you need him, Saharo's guy is there. He's on
put stickers on the, on the windshields, or you're not even allowed to do that anymore. You got to put it on the door. But enforcing, trespassing, in these type of parking lots, it's almost impossible anymore. I mean, we have people who leave cars there, and the process of what you have to do to get a vehicle towed, it's just a nightmare. I mean, we have broken down vehicles that it takes me, over a month to be able to get, dependable towing to tow, the cars out of there. And that's, that is also part of the resolve with having these buses there, because that area where the buses are being parked are on the far end of the parking lot, what we call the horn. And by having these buses there, we have found that we're not getting the abandoned vehicles back there that we've had for 20-some years. So it's been a tremendous help having these buses there, blocking, those areas where people just dump cars. It's just, it is a nightmare. And the dumping happens in every shopping center. I mean, it's just, we've even had to remove the garbage cans in the front of the shopping center because huge bags and boxes and everything right in the front of the shopping center. So we've had to remove all the garbage cans in the front of the shopping center to prevent that type of dumping, which, you know, I have someone that goes there 3 times a week to empty the cans, and they're just overflowing all over the place.
Okay, I don't want to belabor the point, to monopolize the hearings. So if there are any other board members that, and I want to thank you for appearing to talk to us. And if there are any other board members with questions or comments, go right ahead.
Chairman, may I ask Mr. Rubin a question?
Certainly.
Mr. Rubin, is there a way, I think Mr. Thomas would prefer to use the rear portion of the building for the buses to exit the site rather than to come in front where customers are parking, and Mr. Thomas indicated he observed the dumpsters impeding the ability of those buses to get through at the rear of the building. Can we ensure that the dumpsters are going to be maintained where they're supposed to be maintained and not in that blacktop portion, which is the driveway, which is also, quite frankly, if a fire truck needs to get back there, can't get back there if there are dumpsters. Can we assure the board that you will keep that area free so vehicular traffic can traverse the back of the building?
We can. Again, not for this meeting, but when the building was built, there was only, at that time for zoning, there was only one spot for trash. There was not the requirement for the recycling of cardboard. So, you know, the spot that is designated, you know, as per the plans, is still the spot where trash is kept. But now we've had to add another container for cardboard. So, you know, that bin has to be put onto the blacktop. I will talk to Fauci Trucking, South Algae, and have them push that container further back so it doesn't impede that driveway. I could certainly do that, absolutely.
Okay, and I think what Mr. Thomas is saying, that area behind the building really should be accessible, not only for the buses, but, you know, God forbid, a fire truck needs to get back there, or some other emergency vehicle needs to get back there, so that, I think if you can assure the board that you will do what you can, not what you can, you will do what you have to do to get everything off the blacktop so that the back of that building is accessible.
I will do everything in my power, but, like, once again, the recyclable cardboard bin is in that last parking spot back there because there's no other place to put it. Because
nobody's saying you can't put it in the parking spot.
Saying it needs to stay out of the travel lane. Absolutely.
And that's what I'm saying. I think we can end this conversation. It has to stay out of the travel lane. All the reasons we discussed, including emergency access that Mr. Lanford brought up.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Chair, you know, your suggestion about the circulation go around the back, that could certainly be imposed as a condition if the board were to approve the variance. Additionally, with respect to the issue with other...
Jason,
excuse me, the
videographer is saying
he cannot hear a word you're saying, so could you please move closer to the mic? Thank you.
How's that? Better?
Yes.
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 Okay. As I was saying, Mr. Chairman, if circulation of the buses from the rear of the building is something that you would like to impose as a condition, that could certainly be imposed if the board were to act favorably and grant the variance. Additionally, the concerns about the other bus company parking there could be alleviated simply by the limitation of the 15 school buses that the variance would allow for, meaning that that 6
16th or 17th bus would be a violation. So the board certainly can impose conditions on that without too much complication.
Well, for you, it's
Okay,
gonna be
thank
a
you.
complication, because you have to.
Any other board comments, questions?
I would like to possibly suggest a table of this whole project until we can find out who this other bus company is.
I think
The suggestion
from the attorney is
a good one, which is,
and
frankly,
I was thinking something along the same lines, which is,
I don't think if the board is inclined to have a condition, I would recommend against having this bus company versus that bus company. They're asking for 15 buses. They have a 16th bus on that site. The property owner is going to get the zoning violation, which they'd be in violation of your approval. So, in my mind, frankly, whether it's Somerset or Sunset or whoever, that's irrelevant to me. I think the issue is, do you want to allow 15 buses to be parked on this site? It's incumbent upon the applicant and the property owner to abide by that. If they don't, they're going to get a violation, and if they don't comply, a summons.
Any other questions or comments?
I just have a question then, because would the application still be relevant specific to Shaha Rose? If what is being granted would be for bus parking?
Well, typically, Ms. Bethea, variances, while it's pursued by a specific applicant, they generally run with the land. So you are granting this property the variance for 15 bus spaces, and that's with good reason. Saha Rose could change hands, even though it's the same business. They could have to change the name, or simply, they get bought out by another entity. But as long as that use is still staying the same, that variance should run with the land.
Okay, thank you.
But then also you're kind of saying that the resolution should limit the size of the buses, not just say buses, 15 buses, but 15, 16 to 24 passenger buses that are permitted to be there.
That's correct, and it should also specify school buses, as the attorney referenced the prior testimony. If they're coming in and claiming that this is an inherently beneficial use, that inherently beneficial use is incumbent on it being an accessory to a school. So it has to be school buses.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? All right, Mr. Lanford, where are we here? Any other witnesses? Are we done? I'm sorry. We're really technically still involved with traffic, so if there's any other traffic questions or anything, this would be the time. If not, Mr. Lanford can move on.
Yeah, I very briefly need to recall Mr. Anisel because there was additional testimony. He was our planner, just to verify that his position concerning the variance has not changed based on this testimony. Can Mr. Anisel be called, please?
Mr. Leffert, I'm here.
Mr. Anisel, you testified at the May hearing and you were qualified as a licensed professional planner?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and you were listening to the testimony of Ms. Dolan this evening?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and in your testimony in May, you opined that the parking of school buses is an inherently beneficial use based on case law, and that this location was appropriate for the parking of school buses, especially in that one corner of the building. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And Does your opinion change in any way based on the testimony of Ms. Dolan this evening or the statements of the property owner, Mr. Rubin?
No, they did not.
Okay. And just to clarify, I guess there was the confusion as to the square footage of the building, and you testified at the first hearing that the building was 7,000 square feet. Where did you get that number?
I got that from the tax assessment on the building.
They're the one who provided the number to you upon which you testified and relied upon and Ms. Dolan relied upon, correct?
That is correct.
So maybe Mr. Rubin's going to be paying more taxes if they've under-assessed the size of the building. But that's another story.
I hope not.
No.
I hope not. You know, we went from $40,000.
Mr. Rubin, I'm just being facetious, please. I'm not asking you a question, okay? I have no further questions of Mr. Anisel.
Any questions from the board? No more witnesses, correct?
I have no more witnesses.
Okay. Then I guess we can open to the public.
Okay, looks like we have Donald with a question. Go ahead, Mr. Connell.
Hello, I'm still swearing in, I guess. I guess it's a technical question for the board. Earlier in the discussion...
I'm sorry to interrupt. Do we need to swear him in? He was sworn in another time.
Yeah, he was sworn in tonight. He remains under oath.
Okay. I'm sorry, Mr. Connell. Go ahead.
All right, no problem then. So earlier in this discussion, you said that the current occupants have a catering approval, and they are allowed certain parking. So now you're taking away a certain amount of space for the parking. So technically, are those conflicting approvals? Like you're actually, if they want to actually have a banquet or something like that, they actually have less parking spots than they think they have. So is this something that needs to be discussed? That was my question.
Well, I think Ms. Dolan can answer that. I think she did address that in her testimony. Dolan, do you want to address that?
Yeah, I did go through that in my testimony. I had said that there's at least 85 spaces available after we consider the vacancies and the buses. And if we've got 150 people and the typical ratio is 3 people per car, that's a demand of 50 spaces for a highly attended maximum capacity of 150 people. So if we need 50 spaces and we've got 85, and the 85 is based on having the buses parked there, in my mind, there is no negative impact to the prior approval for that use on the property.
Okay. That was it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other members of the public?
Okay, I'm not seeing anything, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we'll close the public, and if any further comments or information, Mr. Lanford?
Just very briefly, as I indicated initially and as we've discussed tonight, school buses are inherently beneficial uses. Case law has indicated that they are necessary, so to speak, appendage of a school. Schools are inherently beneficial. You got to get the kids to the school, and buses are needed and necessary.
Can hear him?
Quite frankly, while there were certain things that Mr. Rubin and during your inquiry need to address regarding the property,
Can you hear me?
I think one of the interesting statements that he made was that the fact that these school buses being there
actually eliminates a problem that existed prior to the school buses being there, which is dumping. Again, my client is looking to park 15 buses in a designated location. We have no problem marking those spaces, restriping those spaces so they show where the buses need to be parked and provide the appropriate signage. Again, Mr. Chairman, if you feel it's appropriate, the board feels it's appropriate that all vehicles, all those buses exiting the site have to do so through the rear of the building, that's not a problem. My client is there. He has his office there. He can ensure and direct his drivers on how to exit the building so that that can be accomplished so that the buses do not interfere with any customers coming into the property. Based on the testimony of Ms. Dolan, which you heard this evening and which you requested, there is adequate parking on the site today for the buses and for all of the uses that are currently there. And also, Ms. Dolan testified that with respect to the vacancy, that she factored in the 2,500 square feet of vacancy and that there is sufficient parking on the site to handle that, so that there is no negative impact. She also opined that entering and exiting the site can be done with safety. There are no problems with ingress and egress. So based on that, I would respectfully request that the board grant the use variance with whatever appropriate conditions they feel are necessary to protect the shopping center and to protect customers of the shopping center that need to access the store, such as using the rear of the building for ingress and egress. And again, we would be happy to restripe or do whatever else may be necessary as the board deems it appropriate. I thank you.
Peter, you keep saying leaving by the rear of the building. Don't you mean by the rear entrance to the parking lot? And you keep saying building.
I think what Mr. Thomas wants the buses to do is go behind the building and make a left after they get past the building. Isn't that correct, Mr. Thomas?
Yeah, it's a natural exit coming out of where the buses are going to be parking. They just have to go straight behind the building, go around the side that's on the left as you're facing it, come right out the driveway to Kennedy Boulevard. They don't have to go through the parking lot in order to get out. They have to do that to get in the morning or in the afternoon, but at least you eliminate one movement that has them driving through the entire parking lot. And there's nothing back, there's no traffic in back of the building. It's paved. It's perfectly fine if it's navigable. That's the key. It just separates the buses a little bit from the customers and the car traffic. Anyway, at this point where I guess any other comments or questions, we'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I'd be keeping notes on the different things that have been discussed and agreed to, and may help the board with the motion. I have that it's limited to 15 buses. No fueling, oil change, et cetera, will occur in that area. I'm going to suggest that they be required to restripe the entirety of that parking area, meaning the horn. You know, that parking 50, I think it's a 56 space parking area in the back there. And that restriping will include striping for the 15 buses. That will have to be shown on a plan that is submitted to the Township TRC for review. On that plan will also have to be no idling signage. Signage indicating that the buses may only be parked in the bus parking spaces, and that it's only that area is authorized for storage. That plan would have to be submitted to the Township within 1 month of the memorialization of the resolution. That typically occurs at least a month after the approval, so that gives the applicant roughly 2 months to get a pretty simple plan together for the review of the township staff. And then those improvements will have to be made 3 months after the memorialization of the resolution. Again, that gives them ample time to throw up a few signs and to restripe the parking area. Buses must be operational and in a good state of repair. That's the extent of the conditions that I have.
Mr. Healy, you addressed it to say no washing of vehicles. I think that was something that was raised by the board members.
I think that would fall under no fueling, oil change, washing, et cetera.
Okay. And also, Mr. Thomas's suggestion that the buses exit your designated parking spaces from the rear of the building?
Yes, thank you. That is my note, I skipped that. Yes, signage indicating that, or directing that the buses around the rear of the site, and also an ongoing condition that the owner of the site needs to keep that travel lane clear.
How about a specific, finding out who the other bus company is?
Well, again, I would suggest that would be that's an enforcement issue. Suggestion made by the board attorney, and I support that. That recommendation is that the resolution not specify one bus company versus the other, that if the board is inclined to approve it, it'd be limited to the 15 buses, and the storage of those buses in those designated spaces. And that the buses can only be stored in those spaces. If there's a 16th, 17th, 18th bus, regardless of who it is, the property owner is going to be getting a zoning violation.
Okay. Two quick questions. Based on our attorney's comments, should it be specified that it's only school buses?
Yeah, 100%.
And then, did you include a restriction on the overall size of the bus?
I did.
24 passengers?
I thought it was the usual kind of large school bus, if I'm mistaken. But that's not the case?
No, they're 16 or 24 passenger buses, they're not the big buses.
Okay. All right, thank you for that clarification.
Okay, anyone want to put together a motion?
Sure. I move that we grant Sahara Rose a use variance to allow it to park 15 school buses of 16 to 24 seat capacity on the premises located at 2 JFK Boulevard, Somerset. The property will will restripe the entire parking lot known as the Horn, where the parking for the buses will take place. There will be striping made specifically for the 15 school buses, so that there is no question as to where they are situated. The remainder of the lot will also be restriped for individual cars, and the entire plan will be given to the zoning department for its review. Signs will be erected saying no idling, and they will also direct the buses to exit along the back of the building to JFK Boulevard rather than through the main parking lot. There will be no maintenance, repairs, washing, gasoline filling, oil changing, or any other act other than parking and emergency repairs on tires that will be permitted on this site. I think that got around. I second the motion. There's no discussion.
Go ahead.
Carol Bethia?
Yes.
Richard Prokanic?
Yes.
Joel Reese?
Yes.
Alan Rich?
I'm going to vote against this application.
Gary
Gary Rosenthal?
Yes.
Robert Shepherd?
I'm gonna vote against this application as well. I think that generally speaking, it's a good idea, but the fact that it feels like there's going to be a situation where nobody's gonna claim responsibility when things go south, and, it's just not, something that feels like it's sufficiently bumped up. I think that it's not a bad idea to park buses on a space like this, but I just don't think it's going to go well. And there is I understand it's an inherently beneficial use. I think the negatives of this particular situation with this particular owner and this particular applicant and the renegade buses that seem to be coming on and a lack of enforcement or other problems that occur here, they lead me to say no to this application.
Thomas?
I'm going to say no also, and Mr. Shepherd couldn't have stated I can't state it any better than he did for the same reasons.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, unless there's an objection, meeting is adjourned.
Just everybody remember to hold on to your Joe Salazar. It was handed out for this
week's meeting.
So make sure you have it, because it was carried. I don't think any other matters have been carried, so just make sure you have that one. Thank you, have a good night.
Good night.
Okay, thank you all, and have a good night and weekend.
Good night.
Meeting adjourned.